Hey, welcome everybody. This is the first edition of what we're probably going to call Table Talk. I'm not really sure.
This is Table Talk.
We're kind of...
Oh, we're live?
We're trying some stuff. We want to give you, the church, as much resource as we possibly can to help disciple your family and share the great news of Jesus with everyone in your life. So this is our first attempt at something new. What we're going to do, we've just got a couple of the pastors, and we're going to talk about the sermon from this week. Maybe give some more insight if we possibly can, or maybe even give you some way to help re-communicate this to the people around you to help them understand better what we're doing here at Calvary. So initial thoughts, guys, this week. Hell Week 1. If you were here, you know, Hell Week 1. Talking about hell, talking about answering your questions about hell. We covered 3 big points this week. 1, hell is real. Hell was not created for you, and you were not created for hell. So, guys, what stuck out this week to you?
I think, for me, it was point 2 and 3 of the sermon really stuck out because it's just so, for me, it's kind of like a shift in our thinking. It really is a paradigm shift when it comes to hell was not created for you, which the prevalent notion I think within our culture is, yeah, hell was created for me. And it gets to that idea of the problem of evil and how can a good God blank all this evil.
It plays to the idea that God, how God made this place of ultimate torture and torment, and he must get some kind of pleasure from that, right? I mean, and so the idea that you weren't made for hell, I think is a very important notion, because I think this answers and brings up a whole lot of other questions that people have in culture about hell. Why is it there, and where did it come from, and why would a good God make it? You know, I think those are all relevant concepts.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, just from the fact that it does display a great deal of hope for a person. If hell was not created for you, then what were you created for?
Yeah,
and so it just creates a very hopeful possibility and opens up the door to the gospel. Because if I wasn't created for hell, then what was I created for? Well, you were created in the image of God, and you were created for a certain purpose, and you were created uniquely for the purpose of to glorify God and enjoy Him forever.
Yeah.
And so it's just very significant as far as how it just changes everything, and it shifts our thinking, and it affects us.
Yeah. Well, the thing I like about the series that we're doing now is it's very intentionally conversational. You know, Jeff is asking us to give questions. What are the things that you want to know about hell? And so, of course, in the next weeks, we're kind of trying to answer those questions in a very real and irrelevant way. And, you know, starting the series off really addressing the fact that there is a real place that God made called hell. And it has intention, and it has purpose, and it was created for a reason. And as Jeff mentioned Sunday, you know, the idea that hell was created for the devils and demons, those who did these evil things and tried to overthrow, you know, and kind of did this thing in heaven. God made a place for them, and so hell is a real place. It does exist. It's not imaginary. It's not. I think one of the things that we've gotten in our head, I think, is we've been influenced a lot with pop culture and with ancient kind of literature, Dante's Inferno, the steps of hell. I think we've been heavily influenced in our thinking about what hell is, and so one of the things I'm excited about with this series is sort of this unpacking that Jeff is looking to do, just sort of unpacking hell in a way that these things that we think of are really fictional. You know, the devil does run with a horn and pitchfork and got a tail, and you know, hell doesn't have these 7 levels in which we operate. There's a lot of myth around the way we kind of see hell, and so I'm really excited about this sort of unpacking. Let's just get to the truth and the real about what this place is, and the fact that it's not made for us, and that we're not made for it. So I'm really excited about how it's going to be unpackaged and kind of looked at over the next several weeks.
Okay. So one of the big things we want to do with this video is we want to help resource our people. We want to give them more more things to use as we're carrying out the Great Commission, what we've been talking about for the past year. So let's go back to the first point of the sermon, that hell is real. What is some advice from you to our people about how to talk to someone who comes with the mentality that hell is not a real place, that this is not something that they're too terribly worried about, but as Pastor Jeff was saying on Sunday, this is a very important reality that we've got to be aware of. How would you talk to somebody who's coming with that mentality?
I think for me, it would be expect a couple of things. One, expect that people are going to be offended. Yep. It's one thing to say that heaven is for real. That does give a lot of people hope and whatnot. But when you say hell is real, it's a real place, that to me is more offensive to the person who's never set foot in a church, or to the person who is totally other when it comes to the Christian faith. And so for me, my somewhat encouragement to them was expect that it's going to rub. Expect that it's going to cause tension, because it really does expose within us, one, our mortality, two, that there is no gray when it comes to this, because we're saying hell is a real place. That is an absolute truth that we ascribe to, that we hold to. And so there is no gray there. And because there's no gray there, that means there's only one of two destinations for all of humanity. And so that does really create a lot of tension within one itself. And that's the purpose. That's the point. It's supposed to cause tension. It's supposed to, one's worldview is supposed to come into crisis when we start discussing these things.
I think that people who hold to the idea or come to the discussion saying that hell is not a real place, they have to come to into that conversation with several sort of presumptions, because it's hard then to also think that heaven is real if hell is not real, because you kind of one is also natural kind of consequence of the other. If hell is real and you have to be a certain kind of person to get there, then the people that aren't that kind of person, where do they go? The absence of there's certain presumptions that people make. I think that one of the presumptions that's important to note is that we live in a culture where people kind of live on gradient scales of goodness. So as long as I'm better than that guy, then I'm okay. And everything I've ever heard about this thing called God is he's a good guy, and he's the great grandfather in the sky. And there's no way that if he's really good, he's going to really send someone to this fictional place anyway. So I think that there are certain assumptions that people have coming into the idea that I'm really good enough. I've lived a good life, and as a result of living a good life, I can't imagine it even being this place to go to anyway. Why would if I don't believe that God exists, I don't believe these places exist. So there's a lot of presumptions that come into play, and so I think it's important to listen to conversations and let people talk instead of trying to convince them of an answer. Listen. Let people share their ideas and not get offended at the fact that they don't believe there's a heaven or that there's a hell or that there's a God. And engage them in relational conversations and ultimately bring them back to just, okay, so heaven, hell, all right, great. Who is Jesus? Because if we got to get them back to that question anyway. And so I think sometimes the questions of heaven and hell can get mired in the discussion that's ultimately want to use that hopefully as a topic that lets us transition to really, but who is Jesus? What do we think about him and what he's done?
Yeah.
I think for me, it's like when I'm in a conversation like that, is one, be in a place where you are asking questions of that individual, because that creates the ability for you to listen and not to be dominating the conversation. Two, be ready for an answer for when they ask you the question, why do you believe that?
Yeah.
And so there's
a biblical principle. Be ready to give an account for a hope that's in you.
Yeah, be ready to give an account. Yeah. So when that comes, you have to be able to validate your belief structure in order for you to be essentially having the conversation with any sort of integrity. Yeah. Because if you say hell is real, then you need to be able to back it up as well.
And it's not not in the sense that I've got to be able to make an argument that says, well, point A,
right.
therefore point B, therefore you come to this conclusion. But you need to be able to tell the story and the narrative in a consistent way. That I believe there's a hell because I believe there's a heaven because I believe there's a God. And I believe that this God created a place for us to go called heaven. And people that don't go there go to a place called hell. And there's this... But the narrative, I think, that we, especially in this culture we live in, that's sort of a postmodern, where the best story kind of wins, as opposed to the best syllogism. You know, being able to tell your story within a biblical framework and it be consistent, I think, is an important part of the conversation. People talk about hell. When you're engaging with someone, it's not about arguing them to, well, this is why, and here's the point. It's really just, here's my story, man. This is. I believe that there's a place called hell because I believe there's a place called heaven because I believe that's where God lives. And He came and dwelt among us. And I believe that so it ultimately is just a matter of, I think, keeping our narrative, our story about this place consistent with our theology.
All right, well, we're about out of time, but before we wrap up, 30 seconds, any last remarks you want from this week? Hell Week 1, hell is real. You're not created for hell. Hell was not created for you. Last remarks, last application for our people.
Pay attention to the way that the sermon notes are being written because we are giving you the tools in the very nature of the sermon points. You just said hell is real, hell was not created for you, and you are not created for hell. That is a great starting point as a conversation with somebody who has no clue about it.
And I would then say that part of the beauty of this series is everyone that has questions, we're going to answer them. The goal is to answer these questions. So ask your questions. Join the conversation, if you will. Because at the end of this series, the goal of us as pastors, the goal is in equipping the saints to go do the ministry. So we're hopefully providing the church with answers, resources. These are the questions that people in our work, in our places of hangout are asking. How do we answer those questions? And so it's important, I think, that everyone just kind of ask the questions. Get your questions answered so that you're then able to tell others and your story is consistent. And this is just a great opportunity to do that in a very conversational sort of way.
Right. So if you want to ask your questions, there's a couple different ways to do that. You can get on our Facebook page. That's Calvary Columbus. Is that right? Whatever our Facebook page is, you can find it. And you can leave a comment on our Facebook page asking your question. You can use the sermon page on the mobile app. It has a box right at the top for you to ask your question. Or you can text your question to the number 22333. If you start your text message with the word Calvary Columbus, it's all one word, Calvary Columbus, and then write your question, we'll get it that way. And if you're here at church on a Sunday morning, in your bulletin there's going to be a space for you to answer your question, or ask your question that way, and put the words in the worship offering plate. Yeah, thanks.
The thing that passes.
Lost for words.
There you go.
Oh, good. Hey, thanks for joining us.
Lost for words.
Lost for words, yeah. Thanks for joining us week 1 for table talk, maybe? Something like that. We're going to get back to work because we don't just get to hang out all day and do fun stuff. Alan's taking a selfie real quick.
Here we go. Cheese.
If he can ever get the camera open. Woohoo! That's the wrong camera.
Hey! See that online today, boys.
Hooray! And see you all later.
All right.
Have a great night.
I got to. I'm out here.
You made time. That was good. Yeah.